Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're back with another episode of Ummah in Exile. Today discussing a very, what I think to be crucial topic. Not just a crucial topic for the Muslim Ummah, but a crucial topic for mankind at this point.
Absolutely.
And today we have another guest with us, our brother David Musso, who's passionate about this subject and has some field expertise in dealing with finance, and just introduce yourself a little bit before we kind of go broader into the topic.
Yeah, well, thank you both for having me on. Assalamu alaikum. So by trade, I work in finance and corporate strategy, and then outside of work, my big hobbies are obviously investing, finances, things like this. But I found myself, as I kind of delve deeper into Islam, a lot of the modern financial advice, quote unquote, that we were given in school and kind of just general media doesn't really align well with Islamic principles. Obviously, riba, interest, things of this nature that go against the core of the religion. So it's a topic that I'm passionate about and that I've learned a lot about because as someone who trades and invests, you have to know what you're trading and what you're investing in to make sure that it's halal and you're not exceeding or transgressing the Qur'an and Islamic rules. So definitely excited to have this conversation with you both today, and it's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and it's something that's very important, I think, for the Ummah, is to have this financial education and not only just invest in your 401k, etc. Even that has fitna in it, right? You have to ask for maybe self-directed 401ks, etc. I'm getting into topics already, but I think it's just something that's very important for every Muslim to know, and how to navigate, especially here in the West, all the financial products and kind of investment strategies that are out there. So,
SubhanAllah. I think that this is, not only is it an important topic, but as the newer generation is beginning to kind of expand into different fields past just like the traditional fields of like medicine, like doctor, dentist, lawyer, right, or engineer, and that right. It's so important to now kind of have that foundation for our communities as well, because while we can ask for help from a financial advisor, from Chase Bank or like Huntington or one of these huge branches, it's really important and to kind of feel that comfort, especially when it comes down to investing money, which is a very important asset. That you're talking with maybe like a brother or a sister that has that knowledge. So I like, it's not necessarily a topic that I'm like super, I'm not a knowledgeable man on, say, for example, economics, but there are, personal stories that happen in all of our lives, subhanAllah, that relate to either us questioning the financial system, us looking back at, are there any examples in history that maybe we can copy, and looking towards the future for not just ourselves, but also, again, like the future generation, the youth. How are we going to be able to set them up financially? This is the time for us to ask these questions, and it's our generation that needs to answer the question, right? Absolutely. So, wallah, this is, as much as it's a topic that I don't know a lot about, I'm just as passionate about it, subhanAllah, and really passionate to hear you speak about it.
I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, I come into this topic from a very historic, political perspective, right? I actually teach economics too. I teach
so you are knowledgeable.
I teach economics to juniors, but look, like what you said earlier, the economics that you see in textbooks and that are fed to you in the school system is not necessarily how the real financial system works in the world. There's a lot of really intricate details that are crucial that they leave out, right? Which actually brings me to the introduction. I mean, obviously we've established the fact that this is a very crucial topic.
Absolutely.
Very crucial topic, especially because money drives the world, right?
Money is power.
Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drives everything. But in terms of human behavior, money is one of the key factors that drives the way people act.
Money equals power.
Money equals power, right? So I want to actually briefly discuss the history of money, right? As the foundation for people to understand here, the history of money. So what is money, right? What has money been historically?
It's been a medium of exchange, right?
Textbook definition.
Yeah, just a textbook definition, business degree, etc. But it's always been a medium of exchange. Now, in the past, it was always tied to something, right? Whether you'd be trading sheep for land or gold for services, there was always something that kind of backed.
Like a tangible thing.
A tangible thing that backed what money was and what gave the concept of money value. Now, the United States, we had this for a long time, up until, I believe, 1971, where our money used to be backed by gold. So it was known as the gold standard. So it was pegged, the USD was pegged to the value of gold. Then in 1971, there was a decoupling. So money just became, quote unquote, fiat. You might hear this term, but essentially that means when it's not backed by a physical asset, it's just there. And we have trust that I'll accept the USD, you'll accept the USD, and that's kind of the value of it. Right? So that's kind of what money, quote unquote, is, and we've kind of deviated in recent times from it having some kind of asset that's behind it and that backs it. So
it's speculative.
It's speculative at this point. And some interesting statistics to throw at you guys. Since that decoupling from the gold standard, I want to say the purchasing power of the USD has declined by 90% or so.
Wow.
So, obviously money is being printed at all times. The Fed is printing at all times. There's bailouts, there's this, there's so many different methods where the money supply is just being pumped. And especially in recent times, something to note, I believe in 2024 or in 2023, over a 4-year period, so imagine 2024 to like 2019 or 2020, COVID era, 80% of the current money supply was printed in those 4 years. So when you think of that, fiat is almost, not to quote Elon Musk here, because he was asked recently about, because he's starting this new political party, the America Party, right? We can talk about that at a different time.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. But somebody basically asked him, like, would you accept Bitcoin? And he said, yeah, like fiat is doomed. And I kind of echo those same sentiments that fiat is doomed. Like, we're just printing money at an exorbitant rate. Purchasing power is decreasing every year. Inflation is happening. There's just the value of the dollar is not tied to anything, and it's losing value rapidly. So this is potentially, something that we'll be talking about, later on in the pod. But there's certain things that governments are doing potentially in preparation for this kind of debasement or this loss of complete value of fiat currency and the USD. So I think that's just something very important to note when we talk about money. It's always backed by something, but now backed by nothing, and it's just based on trust and interest, right? Interest really drives monetary policy. Debt spending, quantitative easing. Whenever you hear about a rate meeting happening, Jerome Powell, it's like a big thing on financial news. It's like, oh, the Fed is having a meeting today. And it's always about, is he going to cut rates? Is he going to increase rates? It's all driven by interest, right? So from an Islamic lens, that's not a monetary policy that aligns with us really at all. It's hard to justify the value of money coming from these just random policies and things of that nature. So kind of a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, I actually think that's a very good overview. But I do want to stop. You give a very great summary of what we're currently dealing with, basically. I do want to stop a little bit to clarify for a lot of people maybe listening also the like a little bit intricate because banks, right, have been around for longer than that decoupling.
Yes.
The decoupling happened in 1971. Richard Nixon comes in a televised address, says the U.S. is off of the gold standard now, right? But the banks were around before then. So, but they weren't around forever. They've not always been around. For example, you won't hear of banks in the Roman Empire, right? You're not going to hear of banks in ancient China. It's a concept that really kind of came around in the Middle Ages. And the idea behind the concept was you store your gold here or your property here. I give you a bank note to essentially verify to you that when you're transacting with somebody, you own this amount of gold, right? Or you own this amount of thing. And the bank can back you up. The first, and this was done in small scale throughout history, The first time it was done en masse was in England in 1689, right? In 1689, after coming out of a war with France, the British Crown was in debt, massive debt. So they needed to essentially come up with 1.2 million pounds, right? How do we do that? Okay, there's this random guy who comes, how about you borrow it? You borrow it from this bank, and then you give this bank a royal charter calling it the Bank of England, right? And now this Bank of England has official government power to issue banknotes to everybody on behalf of the government, and it essentially normalizes this idea of banknotes for the first time in history, right? And from there on, this adaptation it kind of spreads like wildfire throughout Europe. Why? Because now suddenly you can start pumping money and fueling wars and fueling government projects with nothing. Whereas before, the government had a treasury. If the treasury went empty, you couldn't do much. You couldn't pay salaries, you couldn't finance projects, right? So this Bank of England now was the first time in history where this happens, right? And it's a model that's adapted very quickly, especially by, you see like the rise of these powerful banking dynasties all throughout Europe, like the Rothschilds, who you hear about relatively often. And it's true, by the way. We'll talk about them later as well and their influence in the modern banking system. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how this came about. You know, we'll be exploring later on how the decoupling happened, but essentially, the last point I want to mention about the history is in 1944, right at the cusp of the end of World War II, you have something that happens that's monumental. It's called the Bretton Woods Agreement. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Bretton Woods Agreement before, but basically 40 some countries meet in somewhere in New York, I think, you know, and Bretton Woods Island, or Bretton Woods something. It's a territory, I forget. So they hash out this policy where every world currency is going to be pegged to the US dollar. And in return, the US dollar would be pegged to a value of gold, right? The United States was ingenious in this, though. You know why? Because right before that, when the Nazis were attacking Europe, the United States had gone to all the allies and said, you risk the Nazis coming and taking your gold, which they were doing, by the way, right? Send the gold to America and we'll store it for you, right? And this is what the countries did. So in 1944, the goodwill that we'll give our gold to America and we'll attach our currencies to the US dollar. US dollar becomes the global reserve because it's tied to gold. Then, come 1971, the French and the British are like, hey, we want our gold back. And the US is like, oh.
Tough luck.
So they send warships, literally. They sent warships off the coast of New York, the French, to collect their gold. Richard Nixon comes out on TV and says, yeah, we're not operating off the gold standard anymore. So now you need the US dollar instead, right? So everybody just kind of ran with it, and now we are where we are. You know, this is the modern system that we live in.
SubhanAllah, it's, you know, I was just to kind of make like the personal connection here to maybe how the banking system might have been run back in the day was it seems to have been almost a very honorable system potentially back in the day. Of course, you're going to still have your hard money lenders, the people who want to abuse the system back in the day, who wish to, you know, like loan sharks, essentially. Right. That's probably throughout history. But what I have seen, at least in reflection upon the comparison from the past to the present, is that not many people can stand by their word like they used to be able to in the past. You know, one very important hadith is from the Prophet ﷺ, that a lot of us need to actually take, not just when talking about this conversation, making it a central point, but making it a central point to our life is the Rasul ﷺ said, "Al-mu'min la yakdhub." It's such a like simple hadith. Al-mu'min la yakdhub. The mu'min does not tell a lie, right? And notice he didn't say Muslim.
The believer does not tell a lie.
Yeah, exactly. He said a mu'min. So that's like on a whole nother level, right? And you know, again, when somebody gave you their word, like, hey, I need $5 in the past. Right. okay, hey brother, shake on it, right? Or hey, don't worry, I got you, you're my cousin, right? It typically stayed within the family or within the tribe. So there was a certain level of trust.
Yeah, there's an honor system in place.
In today's modern system, you have a bank, right? This takes away the sense of responsibility that one has when handing you money, right? Or when giving you a loan. Oh no, you signed to this agreement. You needed to check all of the bullet points before you were signing for this. Well now we have your house.
Yeah.
Like such a sick mentality. Like this essentially is a trickster mentality where people are devoid of honor. They're devoid of trust. And this, whether it's a cause of the banking system or whether the banking system itself caused it, right? I think needs to be explored. And, you know, as we do our dive a little bit more into like potentials for avenues of financial relief from this type of plague essentially that's taken over, I think that again, the system just went from, hey, knowing somebody on a personal level to now an institution that handles your money, that tells you whether or not you can use your money, where you can use your money. There's no freedom essentially. So the economic system, again, as little of my understanding that I have, anybody can just tell you that it is meant to trick you. It is meant to make you live in this false sense of security. And ultimately, it's meant to strip you at the end of the day. And that's not how a government's supposed to look after its people. That's not how people are supposed to look after one another. And additionally, that's how a community crumbles, because you lack trust in institutions. Now you lack trust in one another. Mm-hmm. So how did we get here, though? I'm really curious, because what was the influence behind maybe the decoupling of the United States dollar from the gold standard and, say, putting it in the petrol? Like, what was the rationale behind it? Because I never really understood it.
Yeah, I think you gave a good explanation.
It's you know, like, people can talk a lot about what, you know, there's a lot of official justifications that are given. Essentially, after World War II, the United States was redrawing a new world order, right? I mean, they said it literally. I know the New World Order thing triggers a lot of conspiracy, but this is something that's literally stated.
George Bush Sr. said it all the time.
Even before in the 1940s, they were talking about post-World War II, there's a new world order. And it literally was. This is where you see the rise of these international institutions come. UN, IMF, World Bank. These are all things that came right after that Bretton Woods Agreement. The IMF and the World Bank, by the way, were literal points in the Bretton Woods Agreement. So how did we get here? Control, power, right? When you monopolize an asset like the US dollar and you make every other country in the world dependent on it, then that means that you cannot be dethroned, very simply. So this is a long-standing US policy after World War II, where the dollar is the fuel of American empire. And this is why they, you know, you talked a little bit about it, that they went to the Saudis. You mentioned it in the regular. Yeah, they literally went to the Saudis, and Richard Nixon did this, and he said, we'll grant you guys protection and, you know, legitimacy in your government, and in return, you only trade oil in the US dollar, which is a policy that to this day continues.
Still, yeah.
Right? That's a very powerful thing, but I actually want to take us back, because you highlighted on something very important. And you kind of took us into responsibility, not exploiting people, right? Not exploiting systems for the sake of profit and, you know, profit margins and revenue and whatever, the modern way that corporates, the corporate world runs, right? That's Islamic economics, basically, right? So Islamic economics is based on the concept of justice.
Yes.
Right? I think one of the key differences between Islamic economics and modern economics is exactly that. If you could speak a little bit to the way maybe like economics of the past could have also been a little more just, right? In the way that transactions were made, in the way that people dealt with each other. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, so, you know, back then it was, I would exchange, whether it be gold, whether it be livestock, cattle, for something that you might have. And it's something that you could kind of see, and it was something that was kind of in plain sight, right? Like there was, still elements
Tangible
of
asset.
deception, right? But
Okay.
or I should say, I'm sure there was still elements of deception from people, but it wasn't as easy as it is now, right?
Okay.
A good example that I like to bring up is these buy now, pay later apps. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
So scary, actually.
like the Klarnas of the world, right?
Yeah,
You know, for example, if you're buying a $100, I don't know, speaker on Best Buy, they'll show you, hey, instead of paying $100 right now, you can do it in 8 payments of $12.50 over this time. But what you don't see when you read that is that there's obviously interest attached to it. So that deception is inherent in almost like everything that we buy. If you think about it, you know, when people talk about buying a home, what do they talk about? Monthly payments. They're not talking about the price of the home. When you're talking about a car, what's the monthly payment on the car, right? Like interest and it is so intertwined into everything that we do now. It's like you can't really escape it. And I think there's a hadith, and I don't know if it's the strongest hadith, but essentially it says everyone will be afflicted by riba and interest, and even those who avoid it will still feel it's dust, right? So that's something that we're kind of in the current day, right? So when you're thinking about buying a car, when you're thinking about buying anything of a larger scale, you're always presented with the options of with interest, right? Monthly payments. It's going to be cheaper for you on a shorter term, but on the longer term, you're going to be paying much, much more. So that's like the key difference in kind of the old school way of things. Aside from the points that we made earlier about actually having an asset behind it, it was a kind of just one-to-one swap. You knew what you were doing, you knew what you were exchanging for. Whereas now, things have changed, and there's all these different financial products that exist, and all these different apps that exist. You know, think about what are they called? The places where you can go get payday loans. You get your checks, 3 days early, but if you don't pay it on the time payday comes, you're charged like 300% interest. This is an exorbitant industry that exists. Yeah, the same the payday loans. If you guys want to look into it, viewers, I encourage you. It's a very evil thing that kind of has spread, and particularly in like lower income areas. When you get your, if you want to get your paychecks a couple days early, you can redeem them, and then say you have a bill due, right? You're like, okay, I need the money now, and then you can't pay it back, and then you're just kind of in a perpetual cycle. Enslaved. You're in a perpetual cycle of debt. So that's just one example, right? And you could go on and on about all these different financial products that exist, but I think that's the main difference, right? These things did not exist back in the day. Like, of course, there was loan sharks, like you mentioned, riba means to exceed, right? To exceed, and that's what they were doing. And it's just crazy to think how it's just so normalized now. And even just, I could go on and on about all the examples. I've been rambling about all the examples, but needless to say, the difference is very stark. There's no honor in what exists now. Like, it's marketed to you as, you can pay this off in small increments, but there's interest attached, and you're paying that amount, and at the end of it, you're paying however X percent more than what the actual cost of the good was. So there's that deception that has really seeped into all the different companies out there that have kind of developed this product. So I think that's really the big key difference in my opinion. What's
the incentive? For interest, right? What's the incentive for interest?
Yeah, from a company's perspective.
Right, and
Yeah. Well, obviously that's a large revenue driver for them, and they have someone who's paying constantly, so their cash flow is going to continue. And then if you don't end up paying it, you can get obviously repossessed. They're going to get their money one way or another, right? So from a company level, it's really about control, and that's kind of how the economic system has evolved. And think about the concept of a mortgage. Like, I think about this sometimes. It's like 30 years. You are signing up for
lifetime.
You are signing up for 30 years of a payment on something that like may or may not go up in value. Like, you don't know what's going to happen to the surrounding area, but just 30 years. And if a house is listed for $250, by the end of it all, you're paying like $450, right? It's a ridiculous. It just compounds and compounds, and the incentive is it's just to extract. Right. It's really to extract, and that's the tool that's being used. And obviously, it's evil, and we're well aware of that. but it's just something that's kind of seeped into everyday life, and it's just normalized. Like, just talk to anybody, it's just, yeah, monthly payments this much, da-da-da, you know, so.
It's normalized on a grand scale.
On a grand scale.
I think this is I mean, obviously we all know that Islam takes a very strong stance against interest. Every religion is supposed to, every Abrahamic religion at least. Christians, for example, the Catholic Church had banned interest in the Middle Ages up until the French Revolution, right? Obviously, Judaism does not allow interest within the religion, but they've justified it in a way where they can export it outside of their tribe, essentially, or faith group to the non-Jews, right? Islam takes the hardest stance here, which is no interest to anybody, right? And
Muslim or non-Muslim.
Right,
Exactly.
Right. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes a very, very harsh, he used very harsh language in the Qur'an about this. He says, interest as a declaration of war on God and His Messenger.
SubhanAllah.
You have to reflect on the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is interest seen as such an evil sin? Because it is the sin that contaminates the rest of society, and it is the sin upon which the rest of all the other sins are built upon, in this modern age at least.
Yeah.
You know, think of any industry that, the banking industry, right? Then the alcohol industry thrives, porn industry thrives, gambling industry thrives, right? All of these things that are seen as vile in Islam suddenly all get to profiteer from this interest-based system. And this is one of those things that Islam is very incompatible with, and it's very hard to digest for a lot of people in these markets, because they know that it's threatening their power, right? The same way that historically, I mean, you have to kind of reflect, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even mention it if maybe it didn't exist, but it did exist. The interest was there. The Jewish tribes of Medina levied heavy interest on the Arab tribes of Medina, or obviously not on each other, but Arab tribes or other people who would be in the region, right? One of the examples I can give you is Medina was a society of primarily farmers. So, you know, as he said, there was hard assets that people had to use. If someone did not have the means to support themselves when it wasn't farming season, they would go and take money from a loaner, right? One of these loan sharks would make them attach their farm to it, for example. If not their farm, literally their family or themselves to slavery, for example. If you cannot repay it, or if you cannot repay it like 2-3 times the amount, then I'll take you as a slave instead. I'll take your family, right? I'll take your property, whatever it is. That's kind of what banks do with houses, by the way. You go and ask for a loan. If you don't repay it, foreclosure, right? They take your house. So you don't even really own your own home. It's a crazy concept to go into, but this is Islam, you know, I think the modern Muslim, because it's called Ummah in Exile, right? I think the modern Muslims gets caught up a lot in the isms. This is a theme that we keep bringing up, right? The isms of today.
The different belief systems.
The different idols, right? As we've kind of coined them.
Exactly.
You'll see people talking in the political sphere of like capitalism versus communism, right?
Which one's better?
Right.
Yeah. Which one should we champion?
It's like, what's the Islamic view of it? It's justice, right? Islam is justice. It's about rebalancing the scales. Socialism, communism, capitalism, they all see the human as a commodity. They see the human as a means of extracting, right?
Yeah, beautifully put.
What Islam sees the human is as a recipient of mercy. So Islamic economics has at the foundation of it mercy. It has at the foundation of it help. It has at the foundation of it rights, right? Why can Islam not be socialist or communist? Because there's property rights in Islam. Property is sacred. Why can Islam not be capitalist in the sense that we understand it nowadays? Well, because the people who rule over you do have a social responsibility to provide for those who are less fortunate. They do have a social responsibility to rebalance the system, to not let greed of the powerful and the rich take over and monopolize, right? So when we talk about these issues that we want to address today, the main thing really, honestly, comes down to there's no mercy for people. There's no justice. Everybody sees each other as a commodity, as either a consumer or literally like an actual tool. So
an asset.
Right. I mean, we've become these parts in a machine, basically.
That's what goes into the loaning too.
Right.
Is like, why did banks actually start preferably loaning to kingdoms or to empires? Because they were backed by tax.
Correct.
Like, we'll pay you back. How? How are you going to pay me back? Oh, we're just going to tax the people.
Yeah.
We're just levy the people.
Raise the taxes.
Yeah, it's like, like what a great deal. That's something that's guaranteed, because out of things that typically last the longest in history, besides religions, typically, the uncorruptible ones, which is typically only Islam, right? Empires last an extremely long time. Right. Roman Empire, 1,000+ years. Of the Ottomanians, 600+ years. I mean, so many empires. They expand so many times. So, why not take this backing of, we'll pay you back in taxpayer dollars. Yeah. And again, the scary thing about riba in my eyes is that there's no cap to it. No. That's the issue, right? Whatever amount of money is flowing in the system, just print more of it. Yeah. And people will borrow more, and people will continue to ask for more, and we'll just go and lock people into this system of essentially oppression. Because in my opinion, the reason why people are bogged down by interest rates, they're bogged down by insurance payments, they're bogged down by house payments and electricity payments, utility payments, they're on the rise. I was listening to the NPR radio station today that by the year 2028, everybody's electricity is going to go up. Wow. Unanimously.
That's awesome to hear.
The reason why everything is going up, though, is because the more people begin to stress and worry about their finances, which is, by the way, a thing that the shaitan wants people to do.
Yeah.
Right. Shaitan wants people to worry about their money. This is in the Qur'an.
The rizq, right?
Yeah.
To attach the rizq to a source other than
that the person will go home and they're a very wealthy individual and they will act like Scrooge, where they'll count every single penny just to ensure that my wealth, is it still here?
Still there.
I counted 1,000 pennies last night. There better be 1,000 pennies. You're not even enjoying your wealth. Yeah. And additionally, the fact that you're not enjoying your wealth is feeding into the fact that your wealth is not recycling back into the community. It's not recycling back into the system. You're just hoarding it for yourself. Essentially, people have become dragons. You know, all these pictures of dragons. What if it was just pictures of hard money lenders back in the day guarding their
I know where you're going with that.
No, but you understand my point. You understand my point, certainly, though, that like it is a what does a dragon represent, though? Quite literally oppression. You're remember? Right. Like the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Hoarding all the gold from quite literally everybody, not sharing the wealth to anybody. Everybody else lives in extreme poverty. That's happening right now in America. The middle class is literally being decimated. And Islam, for again to tie it all back to the Ummah in exile, and to kind of bridge it into the next point, where kind of like what are the solutions in a way. Or maybe if there's another topic that you want to hit on beforehand, but
no. I wanted to add.
No.
You guys said some great things I wanted to add.
I think that again, tying it back to Islam is a system that seeks to take the good from one other system, leave out the bad. Analyze another system, take the good from it, leave out the bad. There are certainly aspects of communism that are very attractive. There are certain aspects of capitalism that are also extremely attractive. Yeah, right. Socialism the same, liberalism, whatever you want. All of these, again, these tools essentially for idolatry, right? In the modern day, we can, instead of battling them, we need to find out a way to reshape them and integrate them Islamically. We don't need to go and have this barrier of, okay, Islam only, we need to go and apply Islam. Whatever was happening 1,600 years ago or 1,400 years ago is not necessarily applicable in today's modern economic time, right? Yeah. But what is applicable is always the haqq of Allah, the will of Allah,
100%.
the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must always hold on steadfast to that. And when we apply the principles of Allah to, say, for example, a topic as big as economics, you don't think that there's going to be barakah from it? That's what limits so many people, is they only see, again, the might equals right thing. They only see, America as the most dominant form of governance. Then that must be the form of governance. We must adopt it. We must adopt capitalism. Right. Yeah. So we need to unlock this, we need to step back from this mindset that we've locked ourselves into as Muslimin, and we need to instead expand our mind into accepting multiple forms, while also admiring what we've been gifted with, which is Islam, which guarantees people's rights, equality, and justice for all, not just Muslims, for all, subhanAllah.
Everyone. I think you guys made a great point in kind of comparing the isms. One thing that I wanted to point out that's beautiful about Islam is the concept of zakat. Right? So not only, and you made this point about it being, Islam being a mercy, and these systems that we have now don't have any mercy in them. So when you pay your zakah, right, it's not only a mercy for those who are receiving it, like you're giving them a meal or you're giving them clothes. It's also a means of purifying your own wealth. Right? So the person that's giving it. So there's even mercy in the person that's giving it. So there's mercy all around, and that's such a beautiful thing. And I just want to highlight, the importance of that. Because we never know where our money is coming from. We may work our jobs, but we don't know where that money has come from. So there's always going to be some kind of doubt, maybe, about, is my money fully halal, etc. There's always going to be those doubts in your mind, and zakat is a way to purify it, right? So it's a beautiful way that you guys mentioned, the comparison, communism, capitalism, all this stuff, but it doesn't have that mercy aspect where Islam has it. So
I mean, you guys hit it right on the head, and you know what's crazy? Going back to the history, right? The Ottoman Empire lasted for 600 plus years. It ended. I mean, it's like one of the crazy facts about the Ottoman Empire is that they were around when the car was around.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It is crazy.
People talk about it as this
from cannons,
like 1920.
But the Ottoman Empire was the superpower of its time up until the mid 1600s. After, this is my own theory, by the way, personal theory. After the development of what we just said with the Bank of England and this lending, excessive lending and borrowing from European governments, is when we begin to see the peak of the age of colonization, one, and Europe starting to advance technologically, at least, at a much more rapid rate than the Muslim world. Now, it's multi-factor. Number one, that's that. Number two, the Muslim world was not willing to adapt fast enough, in my opinion, right? There's a lot of stagnation that happened in Islamic thought. There's a lot of stagnation, going to your point that we need to expand. We need to push, right? I mean, this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the sunnah of the Sahaba, this is the sunnah of the righteous who led this ummah for hundreds of years. They kept pushing, taking the good, leaving the bad, adapting, improving, right? There was a stagnation at a point where the Muslims got too comfortable, right? They felt powerful, they felt untouchable, invincible. There was no major confrontations happening, so it kind of led them to sleep. But one of the main things that destroyed the Ottomans was actually adapting this, right? And what happens is, in the 1800s, especially after the Crimean War in the 1830s or 50s, I could be mistaken on the date, the Ottomans fell into massive debt. So they go to the Europeans and these European banks and they say, look, we need money. Obviously, these banks that are actually not tied to the government, we'll explain that later when we talk about the Federal Reserve, they gave them loans, obviously with interest. So now the Ottomans officially tied their fate, especially their economic fate, to the mercy of lenders that they could not repay later on. There's even a story where Herzl goes to the Ottomans and asks Sultan Abdul Hamid to sell him Palestine. Herzl is the father of Zionism, right? Mm-hmm. To sell him Palestine in repayment for the Rothschilds paying off the entire debt of the empire. And Sultan Abdul Hamid, may Allah have mercy on him, says, this is not my land to sell. You know? That's something very powerful that we glance over as Muslims, that system actually ended up destroying us. Actually, it got to the point that the Ottomans in the 1800s, late 1800s, created something, the Ottoman, it was called the Ottoman Debt Association or something, or the Ottoman Debt Overseeing Administration, something like that. It was supposed to be an institution of the Ottoman government to oversee debt. What it really was actually European banks. The Ottoman government had no matter in it, right? No input whatsoever. European banks being given the power by the Ottoman government to directly levy taxes on Muslim citizens, right? Banks directly having the power to make financial laws outside of the Sultan, right?
Wow.
And this destroyed the Ottoman Empire, because by the time World War I came around, not only were they relying on these banks to provide them with finance, right? They fell behind economically. So this is, I mean, this whole bank thing, we talk about, I'm going to go back to you, we talk about central banks. We hear about central banks, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. We hear about Donald Trump and Jerome Powell having a spit with each other all the time. Right? It's like, why can't Trump remove Jerome Powell?
Yeah. Well, it's not a government entity.
Right.
It's a,
That's so scary.
it's publicly chartered is what kind of the description of it is, but it's a private institution. You know, they have access to the treasury, but they're not a part of the government. They're not in Congress or Senate or anything like that. It's just a separate system that, by the way, was not always around. I mean, the Federal Reserve is 1913, I think, is the year it was created. And there's an even crazier stat if you want to look up the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar since the Federal Reserve came in. It's like 97%, something outrageous, right? The purchasing power of the USD. So, anyways, to go back to your point, yeah, they're not a government, officially a government sort of institution. They're publicly chartered and banks are involved in it, but it's not something that Trump can just easily remove. There's like a board of directors. I think there's, I don't know how many members now, 12 or something of that nature.
It's a very weird thing.
It's a weird thing. It's closed doors. The meetings are all, they're not recorded. It's just Jerome Powell comes out, says, good afternoon, here's what we're going to do, and that's it, right? So
it's very shady.
It is shady. You don't really know what discussions are being had there, but that's why Trump just can't yank him, right?
He just talks crap about him, but he can't remove him.
Calls him too late, and that's it.
You know, it's a very crazy, when you just look into the Federal Reserve, most people, there's like a public board, right? There is actually a private board who we don't know the members of. It's very weird, right? There's a private board in the Federal Reserve whose members we don't know. There's 12 technically federal banks in the United States. Each of them have private boards. We don't know about their private boards. There's some government-appointed board members and all that, but technically you can't really you can't remove Jerome Powell, right? When you look into the concept, because 1913, there's this really interesting book. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. How was the Federal Reserve created? Was a bunch of big bankers met in secret in Jekyll Island, Georgia, and they hashed out the laws for the Federal Reserve. And this is public record, by the way. Let me just list you two really important names. Have you heard of the Rockefellers? They were there. The Aldrich, they were there. And there is this guy who's a German banker, born in Germany, right? Became a naturalized U.S. citizen who had very big ties to the Rothschilds, called Paul Webner, I believe. Paul Webner, right? And all of these people met in secret, in complete secret, in Jekyll Island, Georgia, hashed out the plans of how to institute the Federal Reserve, right? Then went to the Congress later with a whole master plan. I'm not going to take all the time to run through it. You can read the book, right? And they created legislation fooling Congress to believe that this was going to be some sort of separate entity, but it was essentially a chartered bank, right? They chartered it to, and you know how the U.S. government gets its money? It goes to the Federal Reserve and it says, lend me money. It actually doesn't even own its own dollar. The Federal Reserve owns the dollar that it issues to the government of the United States, and the government of the United States is a borrower. But obviously there's a mutual relationship here because the Federal Reserve gets to, push interest as much as it wants, makes as much money as it wants, and it has private stakeholders, by the way, and it feeds loans and whatnot to other banks. It's a very intricate system, The U.S. government gets to do what? Forever wars, keep their power, extract resources from other places, right? So it's a system that benefits the empire and the lenders of the empire at the same time. And this is a system a couple hundred years old where these powerful banking families would lend money since England to Napoleon. They financed Napoleon and the Russians, right? World War I, you can look it up. They financed multiple sides and the banking families were perfectly okay. The Rothschilds being at the top of this, again. Same thing in World War II. Did you know that Jewish banking families actually financed the Nazi war machine? Public info, too. It's not even like...
it's not a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy.
It's just,
Right. Why? Because there's no mercy. They're driven by profit margin. Right? And that kind of takes us, I would say, to... As Muslims, we've been exiled from our financial system. I mean, to the point that scholars were even issuing fatwas when the gold standard was killed, justifying how
using the USD is
what the hell, And nowadays there's this financial enslavement of the Muslim world because a lot of the Muslim world is these oil-rich countries too, right? That kind of have a pact with the United States. So we've been exiled financially, but that has led to political exile for us too. Right? Think about that. Just because of this system, Muslim countries are not allowed to organize. They're not allowed to politically lift their heads. They're not. Islamism, right, is like a boogeyman. The West is so against this concept of Muslims having agency over their own resources and over their own lands, because it profits off of them, right? So that's why you see this American interventionism over and over and over. It's to preserve the U.S. dollar. They don't really care about what we do. They don't really care about democracy either, because obviously they prop up dictators all over the place. They care about preserving the hegemony of the dollar because they know that the power of empire goes out the moment the power of the dollar goes out. How does that impact us?
I mean, it impacts us because... again, when you tie the world's economies, countries' economies around the world together, the sphere of influence becomes very tightly bound with one another. So, for example, a lot of people are going to have this back and forth about the modernization of Saudi, in particular the modernization of places like holy sites of Mecca and Medina. Where, for example, alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity of going to Umrah recently. And, I mean, quite literally, I will say that Mecca is the definition of kind of the duality of mankind. You have the center, which is obviously the haram, which is very extravagant. You don't want to leave it. And just outside of the city center is pretty stark change in reality, and I think, again, the reason why this type of standard is being placed in a Muslim country now, because, we can't really complain. We're here in America. We're living by the rules. We have to play by the laws of the system, right? We can't really complain that much, right? What are we going to do? Throw a strike about riba because majority of the country already deals with it, and if in fact a lot of Muslims deal with it, right? Because there aren't many options, right? Not by maybe necessarily free choice. Again, they're forced into it, right? But now you're bringing these realities from the West that are so glorious. So we must again change everything. We must change our whole ideal system and adopt it to our life. Adopt it, bring whatever is working over there, then it must work over here. This type of mindset has really driven people into this idea of, I need to hold on to my money. I can't even give zakat.
Wow.
Another interesting thing is, because I remember you mentioned zakat, is this idea of, and obviously one of the brothers, when he was giving his khatira, about Salman al-Farisi. When he passed away, what did he do with the 200 date trees that were planted to free him from slavery? Did he just keep it to his family? Did he keep the money and say, hey, ensure that this money, 2% of it goes to my family? No, he donated it all. Right? To who? To society. Not even necessarily like a company or anything like that. There were no profit incentives back in the day. The incentive that was driving every Muslim was, dang, I'm going to start making a whole lot of hasanat now in my akhirah.
Exactly.
Even when I'm past. There's this idea of sadaqah jariyah in Islam, which is an extremely powerful form of sadaqah, which is after one person is passed, they can still continue to gain hasanat, good deeds, through what they either a person has left for them to benefit them, or for what they themselves have built, like maybe a well, or people limit it to those things like, I need to go and build a well in Africa, or I need to go build a well in Pakistan, which is extremely good. We know that water is a great sadaqah to give to people, especially one who is thirsty.
Right.
But it doesn't just have to be that. Why does the Muslim limit himself?
Yeah.
We need to expand ourselves in the examples that we can take from history. There are economic ways that we can go and benefit the Ummah, even past one's life.
Yeah.
You see? So, again, subhanAllah, the main, again, issue here is that when you lock everybody into this system of oppression, it gives nobody the option to breathe in this world, to look for another option, to kind of give them this inkling of hope. And that's the only frightening thing, is that even in a Muslim majority country, you'll still see interest. Again, Reggie and I kind of talked about this. They'll hit you with halal fees.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the system that is meant to be employed, necessarily.
Yeah. No, I think it's a poisonous system. I think, like we said, it's been infecting everything ever since the moment it was conceived. And now I think Muslims have gotten too comfortable coexisting with falsehood.
Mm.
I mean, we kind of lost track of the mission of the believer, which is to struggle for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
Yeah.
Struggle against the systems of oppression and the mechanisms that keep the human soul down. A lot of us being born in a post-Khilafah era, post-interest era, or post-gold standard era, whatever it is, right? We have gotten too comfortable coexisting with these systems, and there's been an effort, I believe, to actually morph Islam into something that accepts these systems, right? To try to fit Islam into the definition of these systems and not the other way around. And I think this is something that this generation and the coming generation need to take very, very seriously. Look, alhamdulillah, we've lived to see a lot of these things unfold. We've gained skill sets. We've worked in certain fields that have given us the knowledge. We've talked to people. We live in a cosmopolitan country, right? We've gotten to know other perspectives and points of view. Why are we not waking up yet? Why are we prioritizing our coffee cup over the commands of Allah? Why are we prioritizing our Netflix subscription over freeing people from these chains? We don't feel it necessarily because we live in the heart of empire. Yeah. All of the wealth that is being extracted from that system is pouring here. Yeah. So we're the direct recipients and beneficiaries of it, but at the same time we're in the most powerful place to actually do something about it. to actually make a change. So why are we as Muslims, especially Muslims living in the West, right, not starting to raise awareness about these issues? Why are we actually trying to normalize it? I know Muslims, astaghfirullah al-azim, who tell me it's perfectly okay to get the loan from the bank and buy a house. Brother, it's one thing to argue with me that you just can't escape it, okay? It's another thing to normalize the sin and to say that the sin is not halal just because everybody. No, that's not how Allah's ruling works. We need to wake up. We need to get rid of this mindset of normalizing sins around us just because everybody else is doing it and we have no way out. There's plenty of ways out for the one who seeks a way out. Mm. There really is. Allah will never abandon the one who reaches out to Him for ways out. Mm. So now this brings me to the main topic, I would say, of this entire discussion. Right? This is something I know you are very passionate about. It's alternatives. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
What are Muslims supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, before I get into my main kind of asset class that I think is, important for Muslims to invest in and have a share in, I know that there's certain products out there that are quoted as like halal mortgages. I'm not going to give a ruling on what I believe it is, but, there's obviously points of contention on my end on that. And just to kind of close the loop on the point you made of getting a loan for a home, when you go out and you seek a $500,000 loan for a home, you are essentially saying that you are not satisfied with your risk, right? You are essentially saying, Allah has given me this, but it's not enough for me, and I need to go out and seek it in different ways. So I think that's something that, and you've hammered the point that it's crucial for us to understand that. But I just wanted to kind of make that second emphasis on that. It's just, you don't want to be dissatisfied with what you've been blessed with. Us in the West especially, we've all been blessed tremendously, and it's important for us to not lose sight of that, and to stay satisfied with our rizq, because again, this is all determined by Allah. Right. So it's important to know. Now, when it comes to what I believe we as Muslims should be doing, and some people might laugh at this at first thought because they've never really been exposed to what it is, but alternative investments such as cryptocurrency, I think that is a sector where we can kind of take the power back because it's decentralized. For example, I'll use Bitcoin because it has the highest network effects. It's the most prominent one. Governments are buying it up, and this should tell us something, that if governments are buying this up to create strategic Bitcoin reserves, that there is something important behind it. Mm-hmm. So I say all this to say that, Bitcoin is a way for us to potentially take back some power, right? There's not a single person that oversees Bitcoin. It's decentralized. Every transaction is recorded on the blockchain, so you can see exactly how much someone paid for it, when, where, who. And I think it's something that's very important for us as Muslims to look into. I'm not advocating for everyone to just pour all their money into it, but have some allocation. Right. Have some allocation to these decentralized currencies that, again, this is something that the purchasing power of a Bitcoin, to kind of go back to you, it has increased exponentially in our lifetimes. It has only increased, whereas the US dollar has only decreased. Mm-hmm. Right? And a part of that reason, and not to get super technical with the audience, but there's a cap supply on Bitcoin. There's only 21 million of them that will ever be in circulation. Right now there's about 19 million in circulation. By 2140, there will be the full 21 million in circulation. There's these halving periods that occur. And although people might say, Bitcoin's not backed by anything, true, US dollar's not backed by anything. Mm. But at least the difference with Bitcoin is that there's a cap supply. Right? And there's this network effect now. It's global. You can transact digitally. You can go anywhere in the world and you can pay using Bitcoin. You can transact using Bitcoin. You don't have to convert. You don't have to be subject to fees like with the USD, right? So going back to the point about it being capped, when there's only 21 million of these Bitcoins, and the US dollar is being printed every single day, hundreds of millions of dollars, I think it's clear to see the direction that we're headed in. And it's evident by kind of the current administration's actions towards cryptocurrencies in general. They're doing these digital asset stockpiles. They're buying all these cryptos, particularly Bitcoin, right? Because they're preparing for the moment, and eventually this will happen. I believe that the U.S. dollar is just decoupled completely, and it just becomes a worthless. I mean, it's happened with many currencies in the past.
Yeah.
This is not something that is like a theory, right? You can look at the Turkish lira, for example. That has lost so much value over the past few years. And I really stress and emphasize like Bitcoin being a way for a society to be not only decentralized, but like economically independent. And that's what it's all about. Like you actually own that Bitcoin, right? You could buy it, put it on a ledger wallet, and you have it physically, right? So there's that concept of ownership, right? And I think another alternative, and I kind of view this as, it's still a digital asset, but essentially it's tokenized gold. So what that means is that the price of this token, of this crypto token, is directly tied with the price of gold. So if there's some kind of combination where we can look at using Bitcoin with tokenized gold, for example, there's a way to kind of marry the two, right? There's a financial system that actually has something backed by it, and then there's this finite supply of Bitcoin. And if we can marry the two, there's potentially some financial independence that we can all get in society, right? And who knows what will happen to the US dollar in 20, 30 years, and what's going to happen, what's going to be the new form of currency, right? So again, I'm not advocating everyone to put all their money into it, but I think it's smart to have exposure, particularly now that it's kind of reached escape velocity. Institutions are buying it, governments are buying it, the price is only going up. It's not going to say it's going to go up forever. There's going to be volatile moments, of course, but it's a decentralized way for us to kind of break free from these systems that we've been talking about, and kind of bringing the power back to the people. That's kind of the core ethos of cryptocurrencies in general, right? Is you having the power back from these institutions that have screwed us all in the past. You know, you think of '08, that's kind of the genesis of Bitcoin. It was right after '08 crisis happened. They said, all right, this system's not working for us. And, you know, personally, I think we're still feeling the effects of '08. I don't think we've fully recovered from that. And I think we've kind of hidden it with quantitative easing and more spending and more investment, and this and the stock market all-time highs. But there is going to be a need one day where I think if we don't have exposure to some of these alternative assets and forms of money, that it will be a hard adjustment, right? So I think I advocate for people looking into it, doing their own research, and trying to just have a little exposure. That's all I'm saying. As just a additional alternative to kind of the systems that we see around us. So,
yeah.
I mean, this is a great point. You know, the future of the U.S. dollar is definitely uncertain. Yeah. Even with what you see going on with the tariffs and whatnot now. I think what the United States is actually trying to do is decrease the value of the U.S. dollar in comparison to other currencies, to devalue the dollar. And the reason for that is because if the dollar is priced too high, governments have no incentive to buy it. Yeah. When it's priced lower, we can't take as nice vacations abroad. Right. But foreign governments are more incentivized to keep trading in U.S. dollar and to buy bonds, right? To buy U.S. bonds, right? So I think that's a great point. Look, nothing in this world lasts forever. Nothing. The only constant, as you've mentioned in the past, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the one who's always there, always has been, always will be. Every system that is conjured by mankind is destined to fail at some point. You're already seeing it. I mean, BRICS is an effort to dethrone the dollar. Exactly. Countries have already, especially as countries are somewhat rising to power, we're going into a multipolar world. Yeah. Countries have begun to realize that the role of the United States is going to decrease. They've realized that the power of the United States has already decreased. You know, we can project all the strength in numbers that we want and have as many, but people have realized that we are no longer capable of just policing the world, quote unquote, right? Yeah. We're no longer capable of just extending our reach wherever we want with no consequences. So efforts are underway right now for alternatives, and people want to take away that power from the United States. They want competition. Yeah. The Russians, after the war in Ukraine, they were banned from the SWIFT system. They couldn't get access to their own funds, right? Yeah. I mean, this is insane, right? This idea that you don't even own what you worked for is crazy. What is in your bank account is not yours.
No.
This is like a bank fails, you're only guaranteed up to $250,000. If you have more money than that in the bank,
isn't that crazy?
Tough luck.
Yeah, depending on the bank too.
Right.
Lower. It's crazy to think.
So it's a crazy system where like ownership has been taken away from you, and that is a very un-Islamic concept. Property rights are very sacred in the deen. What you own is yours. No one can touch it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate owner of everything. And if He has given you something, He has given it to you, not to the bank. So, I mean, this is Muslims definitely need to start mixing your points together, alternatives, and expanding, right?
Yes. It's a great point.
Expanding our like, when I saw, for example, the government in Afghanistan after the US left, or the government in Syria now, and when I see them not catching up with these things, like not thinking about Bitcoin, you're an Islamic country, Bitcoin is way more of a halal system than the fiat standard is.
Absolutely.
Right? Why are you not thinking about this? When I see Muslim scholars issuing fatwa saying something like Bitcoin is haram without looking like, this is the thing that you were mentioning, where's the principle, right? Are we applying the principle of Islam? Or are we just like, okay, let's do things as they were 1400 years ago?
Right.
You can't. And this is scholarly consensus too, that you can't. You do have to move with the times. Right? So Muslims need to break out. And they need to start incorporating these systems into their, not only individual functioning, communities. Muslims need to build communities upon these systems. Communities that are self-reliant, self-sufficient, right? They're integrated, but they're not necessarily assimilated into that system of fiat. They can be integrated. You can trade, you can go buy, grow, whatever, but you need to have a self-reliant structure as well. And ultimately, we have to start thinking of paths to freedom. Otherwise, what do we want to be forever slaves? So,
I think the last thing that I kind of want to say is, I'll wrap it up with this ayah from the Qur'an that I think hits onto something that Reggie kind of mentioned, which I thought was actually very beautiful, was lakum dinukum waliya din, which is essentially translates to you is your deen, to you is your religion, and to me is my own religion. So obviously one can look at the superficial, surface level, just translation of it and apply it directly and just say, hey, freedom of religion, essentially. Hey, you do your own practicing and I do my own practicing, and I won't bother you, you won't bother me. But truly at the root of it is autonomy. And it's autonomy, by the way, for the individual to kind of essentially live their life as they wish to go and live their life, as long as there's not any necessarily like a risk to themselves or to the community as a whole. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kind of set this standard for the free will of man on this world. And we can choose to do with it as we wish. We can choose to do bad with it, or we can choose to do good. And I think that the main summary of this entire conversation is that interest is really bad.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I will say the personal note to this is I was talking to a really good close family friend of ours, who's, by the way, his American is Christian, and his African American is black. And he's at like the ripe old age of like 70s, so he's like nearing retirement, and he's a handyman by profession. So I mentioned to him at the dinner table, because again, we just kind of hosted him over for a short time. at the dinner table, I mentioned to him, hey, don't you think that interest is really ridiculous? Just as a Muslim to a Christian with no theology behind it at all. Although my true intention was, hey, don't you think interest is a bad idea? And he hit me with something that blew my mind. He gave his own personal friend a $15,000 loan, okay? Wow. With like 6% interest on it, which is, by the way, by like interest standards, is well, no, I mean that's kind of fair though. Like especially because if you're talking about like a hard money, like if you can't get it from a traditional bank and you need to go outside of this, look at me making an excuse for bank interest rates, right?
It's pervasive.
No, wait, seriously, it's like seeping into the mindset. Like, oh no, Achi, 6% isn't that bad. It's like, dude, 1%, 1% is bad enough. But so this guy was saying I charged him 6%, and over the course of 10 years he was able to, guess what, he was able to pay off his daughter's college student loans just off of the interest alone from the $15,000.
Wow.
Yani, this is unbelievable. And you were talking about paying essentially a house over. You paid for 2 houses while only living in one. Is there fairness in that?
No, it's not.
And I think any rational human being can look at this and kind of say to themselves, this needs to be changed.
Right.
And we need to take the steps whether it be investing in like cryptocurrencies, investing in land maybe.
That too.
Investing, by the way, not just in America, because America is right now currently at peace, alhamdulillah, but invest in your homelands.
Absolutely.
Don't just keep the money here, because Syrians need it now, right? The Syrian people, although their economy is set to grow by 1% in the future, they still need the investments. They still need the hope. And also, you're doing a service to yourself and your family by tethering yourself to the land that born you.
The roots.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, who are we? Do we want to be Americanized? Do we want our children to be Americanized? I understand this is a totally different subject, but it ties in, right? Do you want them to become Americanized with this economic system? Just like how I was just essentially justifying a 6% rate over an 11% rate, right?
It's fair.
It's those small subconscious details though that we miss that have afflicted us.
You're right.
So, subhanAllah, we need to go and figure out, and this is why actually, by the way, David, this makes me so happy that you are actually into economics. You're into the financial system itself.
Absolutely.
Reggie studied economics. Yeah. We also have our friend Kinan, who, by the way, I think that we should have definitely had on this conversation, who's also studying economics right now. I think he's going for his master's or his PhD.
No, he's in law school, but he did study economics.
But he did his master's, I believe, in economics. Master's in public
policy with economics.
Okay, so with economics focus, I remember. So we need to branch out.
Yes.
We need to educate ourselves. And inshallah, we need to make dua, man.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Because
the main thing.
We need to have a trust in the law that he can get us out of the system, because he's the only one that can get us out of the system. We might have gotten ourselves into this rut, but does that mean that we give up? Does that mean that we give up, that we have hopelessness, that we have no hope? No.
Right.
So
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up.
So please.
No, you're right. I mean, look, I can't add anything more to that, but you wrapped it up with how we should have began it.
Yeah.
Which is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the first source that you turn to free us from this. Period.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah. Beautifully put.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Ummah in Exile. We really did enjoy it. We really like this topic. If you guys think of any topics you want for us to discuss, please leave it in the comment section. Please like, follow, subscribe, share to everybody. We need to get the aunties involved in this. We need to get the ammos, the uncles at the coffee shops. So please like, follow, subscribe, share it. That would go a long way. Thank you guys.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.